You're in the middle of something good. A promotion you earned, a relationship that actually feels safe, a version of your life that makes sense. And out of nowhere, a thought arrives. Quiet. Matter of fact. You don't deserve this. You're not that kind of person. Don't get too comfortable. You don't know where it came from. It doesn't feel dramatic. It just feels true. And here's the question I want you to sit with before we go any further. What if the most influential voice in your adult psychology isn't the one you use when you talk to yourself, but the one that taught you how to talk to yourself in the first place? Because there's a word people use for this: resilience, self-awareness, baggage, and none of them quite capture what's actually happening. What's actually happening is more specific and more interesting. And if you've spent years trying to understand why you respond to certain situations the way you do, why certain thoughts just arrive without invitation, you haven't been broken. You've been wired. And the wiring happened earlier than you think, in language you didn't choose, spoken by people who didn't know what they were setting in motion. Here's what developmental psychologists call internalization, and what most people experience simply as their inner voice. Between roughly ages 4 and 12, children don't evaluate what their caregivers say. They absorb it. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for critical thinking, isn't fully online yet. So when a parent makes a casual remark, not screaming it, not even meaning it harshly, it doesn't land in your memory as a thing someone said. It lands in your nervous system as a thing that's true. The researcher Mary Main spent decades studying what she called internal working models, essentially the mental blueprints children build from repeated interactions with their primary caregivers. And what she found was quietly devastating. By early childhood, most of us have already built a detailed internal map of who we are, what love looks like, and what we're allowed to want. Not from dramatic moments, from the small, repeated, ordinary ones. So we're not talking about the big incidents you've probably already processed, the ones you can name and trace and discuss with a therapist. We're talking about the throwaway sentences, the ones delivered in the kitchen while someone was loading the dishwasher, the ones said not out of cruelty, but out of their own fear, their own wiring, their own unexamined beliefs about what the world required of a person like you. Those are the ones that went deepest, because they were never identified as significant enough to question. Why are you so sensitive? You've heard this one, or some version of it. Maybe it came with an eye roll. Maybe it came with genuine concern, or exhaustion, or secondhand embarrassment. And here's what happened in the moment you heard it. Your brain didn't store it as a critique of one specific reaction. It stored it as information about who you fundamentally are. You are someone whose feelings are too large. You are someone who needs to manage themselves more carefully. You are someone who, if left unchecked, will be too much. And now you're an adult who sometimes watches themselves feel things, who edits their emotional responses before they even fully arrive. And you've called it maturity. But part of it, a real part, is a years-old instruction running silently in the background. Smaller. Be smaller. This is part of what I was asking about, and we're getting much closer to the real answer. We don't talk about things like that in this family. This one rewires something specific. It doesn't just teach silence, it teaches shame. The child who hears this doesn't learn that the topic is difficult. They learn that naming a difficult thing is a form of transgression, that emotional honesty is a kind of exposure, and exposure is dangerous. 20 years later, they sit across from someone they love and feel their throat close around the exact words they need to say. It's not that they don't know how. It's that somewhere, in a part of them they can't quite locate, saying the true thing still feels like breaking a rule. I just want you to be happy. This one sounds like a gift. And in the heart of the person who said it, it was. But children are extraordinary listeners. They hear not just the sentence, but the anxiety underneath it. And the anxiety underneath, I just want you to be happy, is often, your unhappiness frightens me. Your pain is something I cannot tolerate witnessing. The child learns, not from cruelty but from love, that their difficult feelings are a burden. That managing their own emotions is partly an act of protection toward the people who love them. And they carry that forward into every relationship they enter. Editing themselves, softening their edges, performing fineness, because somewhere beneath the performance is the old, quiet understanding, my pain is a problem for other people. The inner monologue sounds like this. It's fine, I'm fine, this isn't a big deal, other people have it worse, why do I always make everything so heavy? Present, automatic, believed. You're too smart to be struggling with this. Here's the strange part, and it's a paradox that almost nobody talks about directly. Being told you're capable has the potential to make failure more shameful, not less. When intelligence or ability becomes part of your identity early, you don't just fear failure the way most people do. You fear what failure means, that the thing they saw in you, the thing that made you valuable, was wrong. So you stop attempting things you might fail at. You work twice as hard to appear effortless. You develop what psychologists call a fixed mindset. Not because you lack confidence, but because your confidence was always quietly conditional, dependent on performance, on evidence, on never being caught not knowing. You became competent in public and uncertain in private. And you've probably been calling that perfectionism when it's actually closer to protection. So here's where everything starts to come together. The common thread in all of these, the overly critical comment, the silencing, the anxious love, the conditional praise, is that they were never meant to define you. They were reflex. They were the inherited vocabulary of people who were themselves shaped by voices they never questioned. Your parents were wired too, by their parents, by the particular fears of their particular era, by everything the world told them about what a child should be, what a family should look like, what feelings were acceptable, and which ones needed to be disciplined into silence. This is not about blame. It's about something more precise, understanding that the voice you experience as your own inner critic, your own standards, your own sense of what you deserve, that voice has a lineage. You didn't build it alone in a vacuum. You inherited the scaffolding. And here's where I want to ask you something honest, and I want you to actually sit with it rather than rush to answer. Are the beliefs you carry about yourself ones you've examined and chosen, or ones you've simply never had reason to question because they arrived before you knew how to push back? Because those are different things, and the distance between them is where most of the unnecessary suffering lives. You're so dramatic. Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. Why can't you be more like your brother Sixter Samion else? You're fine. You're not actually hurt. None of these require malice to leave a mark. What they share is a consistent instruction. Your internal experience is not a reliable narrator. What you feel isn't what's real. Learn to override it. And the adult who received this instruction becomes someone who is excellent at functioning, who meets deadlines and holds it together and shows up, and who has an extraordinarily difficult time trusting their own perception of a situation, their own read on a relationship, their own sense that something is wrong. That's not weakness. That's what happens when the original authority on your emotional reality was the person telling you your emotional reality was wrong. And this is the trade-off that nobody names clearly enough. The very adaptations that made you survivable inside your family of origin. The self-editing, the performance of fineness, the competence, the silence, those same adaptations become friction in every adult relationship that actually requires you to be known. What protected you then costs you now. Not because you're broken, but because the rules changed and part of you didn't get the update. Your sensitivity isn't too much. It's information. Your need for honest conversation isn't weakness. It's the thing that makes real intimacy possible. The part of you that keeps shrinking yourself to fit into spaces, that learned to do that for a reason. The reason made sense then. It doesn't have to make sense forever. So here's the question I planted at the beginning. What if the voice you're most used to hearing isn't yours? Here's the answer. The one this whole video was quietly building toward. The thoughts that feel most automatically true are often the ones most worth examining, because the certainty is borrowed, not earned. One small thing you can actually carry with you. The next time a belief about yourself arrives fully formed, I'm too much, I'm not enough, I don't deserve this. Get curious about it instead of obeying it. Ask, when did I first learn this? Who said it? Did they know what they were setting in motion? They probably didn't, and neither did you, but you know now. And that's not nothing. That's actually where it starts.